Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 7th of May and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 22, season 8 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. And once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed.
So we've got away without doing the Force Be With You or Fourth Be With You or whatever there's been hitting the headlines, and the Thursday of this week has been non-news day because of the voting, which is making headlines quite interesting in the political space, isn't it, Curtis? That they can't talk about anything political on the...
Yeah, there's plenty of dead air on Radio 4 at the moment.
There is.
But not on Motor Trade Radio.
No.
We've got headlines a go today, haven't we?
We have, yeah, and we've got some shout-outs to begin with. So we've got the AM Awards that we know are coming up on the 12th of May, which is this coming Thursday. We want to sort of say good luck to everybody that's been shortlisted for the AM Awards. And it's this year, as we said, it's down at London's Westminster Park Plaza. And as we know, last week we had an interview with Neil Adley from Judge Services, who is working with the NFDA on their Driving Digital event that takes place on the day of that AM Awards, again down at the Westminster there at Central Hall. So you can still get tickets if you're quick. I know that when we spoke to Neil, the tickets were running out. You're doing this very good I say a sales pitch, but they are free.
Yes.
But if you...
That's the best kind of sales pitch, isn't it, really?
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Not very difficult, but there is, I believe, there may be still some available. So if you are quick, if you go over to driving-digital.co.uk, you may be able to get yourself a ticket. And as you say, it's the first time that both Driving Digital and AM Awards have been down in London, and with it being at Westminster, it's set to be a fantastic event. So again, good luck to everybody who's been shortlisted for any of the awards on that evening.
Yeah, definitely. And I did notice during the week that the AM Awards themselves have actually sold out. So that's a really good achievement. So well done to the...
You'd think we've been locked down for a few years, wouldn't you, Curtis?
Yes, yeah. You'd think people didn't have anywhere to go at the moment, you know. No, that's a really good signal, especially, as you say, new venue in London this year. But if you want to go to the AM Awards, then you're going to have to sort of track down some old contacts, beg, borrow or steal, but you can still get tickets for Driving Digital. Exactly.
And this week we have got the exclusive sneak preview of eBay Motors Group's April market view, and we'll be talking about some of the latest in pricing, stocking and sales trends across the independent, franchise and car supermarket sectors, and it's a very detailed report, so we'll cover some of the high level performers there, and then obviously site where you can take a look when it is available and have a look in a bit more detail.
Yes, and this week we're rejoined by Stephen Whitten for the latest in his series of Men-Able Moments, so do stay tuned for that. Also, if you'd like to get in touch with Phil and I, if you'd like to come on the show or send us a press release, then email us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com. You can also join the Motor Trade Radio LinkedIn group or follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, and don't forget, all the interviews we've had and our monthly interview with Darren Martin from CAP HPI. We have Steve Young now on, a regular contributor and interviewee from ICDP. The brilliant interview that went down absolutely fantastically with Caroline Burnell, who is from E-Star Truck and Vans and the winner of the Barbara Cox Women of the Year Award. Plus our recent used car chat with Andy Condit and David Billsborough. They're all still available on your podcast feed. So, if you do want to listen to those, I would certainly say check those out and have a listen.
And headlines this week. April's new car registrations dropped 16%, prompting an SMMT reforecast for 2022. We take an exclusive look at April's used car trends in the independent car supermarket and franchise sectors from eBay Motor Group. The European dealer sector isn't real, according to ICDP and Cox Automotive. We also have the latest financials. So we've got Kazoo Q1s, where turnover is up 160%, but gross profits halve. Group 1 Automotive reveal record profits from an outstanding Q1, and Weyland's Automotive see full year profits rise 115%.
So as you say there, Curtis, I mean, you know, we always eagerly try and wait for the new car figure results to come out. Interestingly enough, they have come out this week, and they've also had the revised forecasts from the SMMT for the full year at the same time as releasing this year's results. So, as we say there, that the new car result for April has declined, dropped 15.8% year on year. And that's really how, you know, they've sort of seen the challenges of supply hitting the sector there. So that's down to just over 119,000 units in April of this year. So really citing where, you know, we were talking when we came into the year that possibly that, you know, supply was going to start to increase as the market kind of recovered from the shortages, and then we got hit with the conflict in Ukraine and other shortages of raw materials and challenges around distribution, particularly across the European markets into the UK and other sectors, that really now showing that there's some headwinds hitting the vehicle supply across the market.
Yeah, and some interesting observations from the SMMT within their press release that accompanied the results. So the decline in April was primarily driven by the fleet sector, which was actually down by 33.3% for the month. And this really follows OEMs prioritising private consumer registrations as opposed to fleet registrations, and this helped that particular market sector. The retail sector increased by 4.8%. Also, smaller business registrations grew by 15.4%. So you can actually see where the bulk of that 15.8% drop in the total market came from. You know, it really is the fleet sector. And we were talking about this before we started recording. There is a dilemma now for fleets because they can't defleet because they can't access new cars in the sort of volumes that they would typically expect, and OEMs aren't prioritising fleets. So it's a real dilemma, and a sort of new characteristic creeping into the market there.
Yeah, and you're hearing more and more of it that many of the manufacturers now are focusing, as you say, purely on the end user. One, it's, you know, making sure that they keep that customer experience as high as possible, but also primarily it's a more profitable sector for them to focus on. But as you say there, it's having that impact on defleet in terms of the wholesale sector and the remarketing sector. We know rental operators are the last and predominantly way down that ladder for supply there, and other areas of the sector are just not getting product. And it's quite worrying when you hear stories where you go onto manufacturer websites and it clearly says that its lead times are going to be in excess of 12 months. You hear other manufacturers where, you know, you get a 12-month lead time, you then get an extension out to 18 months, and then suddenly it's a 2-year lead time, and then they remove any lead time at all and just say we'll get you the car when we can. So it is challenging out there, and I must say it's not for every manufacturer. You know, some manufacturers are better placed than others in terms of supply, but you can then start to see why the SMMT felt that they'd need to downgrade their forecast for the year. So they have downgraded their full year forecast. I won't say that it's now coming in line to where we forecast it, Curtis, that could be a bit bad. But they have dropped it from 1.89 million down to 1.72 million. So I think that's a drop of about 9%. So they have downgraded that full year forecast on the back of the challenges that we are clearly we're not seeing an end in sight of some of those supply problems that the sector's facing.
And interesting what you were saying about delivery times, because this will lead into what we've observations for battery electric vehicle sales, because there was a piece in the FT this week about Volkswagen saying that it can't fulfill any EV orders now until 2023. So anyone ordering an EV is really looking at sometime next year for their vehicles.
Yeah, and that's right across the market. Isn't that US and Europe, I think?
US and Europe, yeah. So looking at EVs for the month, because this is one of the few signs of positivity within the April figures. So electric vehicles continue to grow in April, so just shy of 13,000 units were registered, and that was a 41% increase on the same month last year. And it's also worth pointing out that any comparisons with April last year, dealerships were closed until the 12th of April because of the lockdown. So lockdown restrictions lifted on 12th of April. So we are comparing with a shorter month 12 months ago. So EVs ended up taking a 11% market share. That was up from 6.5% last year, while registrations of hybrids also rose by 18.3%. So the number of new plug-in hybrids actually decreased by a third over the course of the month, but they are up in the year to date. But as a result, electrified vehicles actually comprised 28% of all new cars registered during the month of April.
Yeah, and to put a positive note on this, based on a comment with regards to the lockdown. I mean, can you remember the number for April of 2020 when we were in full lockdown? There was only 4,300 vehicles registered. So I suppose positively, we've done 119 compared to the 4,300 that were done in the first month of the UK's strict lockdown, where nothing really happened. And I suppose there's a question of where were those 4,300 cars registered. But I think we covered that at the time, didn't we? There was still some activity taking place. So, we are seeing a continual unseasonality of the market, and as you say there, that steady creeping in of that EV dominance of market share away from your petrol and diesel that is continuing to increase year on year now, month on month.
Yeah. Now, moving on to the used car market. So this is our exclusive from eBay Motors Group, and it's their April market view. So they report that the stability they report stability in April. With prices dipping 1.5%, but dealers' stock and day to sell improved marginally. So if we start with pricing, so the average price of used cars across eBay Motors for April was £17,290. And month on month, as I say, that's down 1.5% from £17,549 in March. But putting this into context, it's still up 19.1% from where we were last year, where it was just over £14,500. And looking at the individual sectors, because there's some interesting trends here. Car supermarkets actually saw the biggest month-on-month fall of 3%, down to an average of £17,461. That was followed by franchise dealers, which was down 2.5% to £20,411. But the smallest drop of the month was actually in the independent sector, which was down just 0.4% to £14,825, and that follows a slight rise in March. So the independent sector is showing more stability there than the other sectors.
Yeah, and I think it's quite, like you say, we've been through that sort of at least 12 or 18 months of change and strength in the market. We're starting to see that a little bit of weakness, but if you look at stock levels, average stock volume overall across all the dealerships are 47.7 compared to 46.2 in March. So slight increase there of the average stock level across all of the market, and that's an increase of 3%. And in line with April of last year, a small increase of 1% compared to April of last year. And as looking at the car supermarket, it's average of 315 units in April of this year compared to 322 in March and 321 of April of last year. A bit more stable across the franchise dealers there, with 59 units on average in April of this year compared to 57 of March of this year, and slightly down compared to the 60 units they had on stock in April of last year. But interestingly, if you look at independent dealers, they've actually risen. So they've gone from average of 35 units up to 36 units in April compared to March, but actually up by 2 units on average from 34 of April last year. So stock volumes seem to be sort of remaining fairly stable across all the car supermarkets, franchise and independent dealers.
Yeah, and looking at demand in terms of days to sell, we can see some improvements here. So average days to sell for April were 40.3 days, and that's a 2.7% improvement on March, which was 41.4 days, so effectively 1 day more. And if we look back 12 months, it's an improvement of 6.7%, because the average in April last year was 43.2 days. So again, some welcome stability there. Really pretty much across all sectors, because car supermarkets, they average 30.7 days, so that's down from 31.2 last month. Franchise averaged 36.8 days, down from 39.9 in March, and independents saw 47.3 days in April, which was 1 day more than March at 46.3 days. So, relative stability there in terms of days to sell.
Yeah, and as I said, this will be available. I think Monday, is it, Curtis? That it should be available online at eBay Motors Group. So
head over to. I was just going to say head over to ebaymotorsgroup.co.uk, and it's on their news section there.
Yeah, so have a look, because we've only covered some of the main highlights, but they do deep dive into all the fuel types, all the things that we're talking around in terms of demand, stock levels and pricing. It's also done by fuel type, and ad views and vehicle listings, again, all by fuel type, and some of the market movers between electric and hybrid as well, which is obviously a key conversation across the sector at the minute. So a lot of detail in the report there. So we've only covered sort of the high level elements of it. So do deep dive into that when it's available on Monday of next week.
And the next headline is from Motor Finance, and it is: the European dealer sector isn't real, says ICDP and Cox Automotive. It sounds a bit like an exam question, this sort of discuss. But this is some interesting commentary that you at Cox Automotive have put together with our good friends at ICDP, Steve Young there, really looking at the different trends within the European markets, and sort of making the point that you can't really treat the dealer market as a whole within Europe, because each country is just so different. In terms of new car sales, more important in certainly countries like Italy, I think, than other countries, in terms of how it contributes to the dealer's profitability. So what actually prompted this, Phil?
I think it's fair. I think when you start to look, and it's increasingly now, when you go right up to the OEM level and dealer level, we've got this, they are looking at, we've come out of we're in a post-Brexit environment. We sit outside much of that European market, and I think you've got to be careful that you don't look at European market as a single market. There are, as you say, there's many different regulations, many different legislation across one country to the next. Data protection changes from one country to the next. There's challenges in terms of cross-border remarketing, selling, and movement of vehicles. There's all these complexities that you sort of look at the Europe and you go, okay, we want to look at a roadside assistance company. That's great. If you want to look at the UK, you've got your dominant players in the UK, whether that's the AARAC and others, but you can't do that in Europe. Each country has different representation. It's a huge complex marketplace, and I think what we're trying to call out here with the help of ICDP there and Steve Young and his team that look heavily at the detail in Europe is that the focus on new and used vehicles is different by country, and the focus and reliance on after sales is different country by country as well, which is what Steve's tried to cite in this release here.
Yeah, and I was interested by some of the commentary on Germany, where after-sales contribution is exceptionally high, and the analysis from Steve Young says that's really supported by a more loyal customer base of up to 7 years and high labour rates. So that obviously enables higher gross profits per hour. So there's some interesting differentiations there between the markets.
Yeah, and let's say in the UK, as we've been talking about continually for the last 12, 18 months, 24 months now, Curtis, is that we have a heavy reliance on used vehicles. The sector, we've seen that with the growth of the supermarkets in the UK. We've talked earlier about Kazoo and their expansion across Europe. And that's because they've identified that, some of the European markets are not as focused on used vehicles as we are in the UK. And I think me and you were talking right before we recorded about Italy. They have a very big focus on new vehicles, not necessarily used. And I think, anybody that's probably been to Italy probably agree with that, won't they, Curtis, that the used vehicles over there are not in necessarily the best condition in some cases. But, I think this is the bit with this. There's different dynamics at play. And we know things like in Germany, the German government there, they have initiatives for used electric vehicles to help that adoption of used purchase of used EVs, whereas in the UK we don't. So there are different dynamics at play, particularly country by country across that European market.
Yeah, and if you want more on that, then do head over to Motor Finance.
Definitely.
So you're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed. And now it's time for our regular Men-Able moment, focusing on supporting well-being in the automotive sector with Stephen Whitten, talking about the eternal dilemma between thinking and feeling, and whether to follow your gut instinct or logic, and how this might apply in your business.
Hi Phil, hi Curtis, and yes, thanks for having me back for another Men-Able Moments. I don't know why I keep saying that. I'm going to keep coming back, aren't I? So it just made me chuckle in the moment, that did. I'm back from my holiday, and so no sea sound effects in the background, no barking dogs either. So, or whatever. But I'm back from a holiday. Had a lovely little break, actually, for the last couple of weeks. I've been considering the difference between thinking and feeling. And I won't tell you exactly sort of what happened in the background to sort of kick this off, but I've been really noticing of late that when I feel that I want to do something, when the feeling is there, it's strong and almost overwhelming, and actually it's a good feeling, if that makes sense. And I feel like I'm sort of following my gut instinct and my intuition and really properly doing what I want to do and what my body wants to do, or whatever it might be. And by comparison, when I think things through, I then go into logic and understanding and considering and calculating. Now, I could start making comparisons between which of those are sort of feminine and masculine energies, but I've touched on that before. And what it's really made me think is let's put it into a sales perspective. How many times have you, if you sell cars, have you sold a car to a customer and they've been really excited on the day, maybe they love the colour or they love the spec or whatever it might be, and then they go away and the day after they ring you up and go, yeah, we've had a change of mind or change of heart or reconsidered. Well, that's, we used to call that buyer's remorse. I don't overly know that exists actually, but we used to say that was the case. But actually, when you think about it in the context of what I'm talking about, what it is that they've gone with their feeling, they've gone with their gut feel, they've gone with what they wanted to do. They followed their heart, followed their intuition. And then when the thinking part of their brain kicks in and they've logically rationalised the decision that they made or the impulse that they wanted to make, they've then reconsidered and changed their mind. Now, all I can say on that subject is that over the years, whenever I've followed my heart, my gut instinct, my feelings, I've always been right. It's always been right, because that's your body's natural mechanism for protecting you. It's your gut feel and your instinct and your natural ability to judge and understand what's going on around you. When you apply thinking, that's our logical brain. And our logical brain is trying to say, forget the emotions, forget how it feels, let's work out what could happen. And then, of course, we start worrying about risk and what could go wrong and all the rest of it. So there's a lot in there. So have a little bit of a think. I guess you might have to listen to that bit a couple of times, actually. But as always, if you want to get in touch, you know how to find me on LinkedIn or on menable.org. You can contact us directly on there. And I do just want to quickly pick up that I think last time or even the time before that, I mentioned the word spiritual. And Phil, I know that this made you kind of take a deep intake of breath when I said the word spiritual. And so I tested it out, that reaction with a few people. And I said, what does that mean to you? And the responses that I got ranged from religious to hippie to away with the fairies. But the one that I heard that I really, really liked was this person said that for them, spiritual means a deep understanding of themselves and who they are. And I thought, wow, I'm going to have that. That's the kind of thing that I would love to have come up with. So I'm going to nick that. So spiritual is a deep understanding of who you are and what you're about. And that really links back to the way that we feel about things, the way that we instinctively understand what's going on around us. And I think that stuff works at work, at home, in relationships, in the world in general. So let me know how you feel about that. Don't overthink it. Don't try and analyse it and put it into logical boxes. And get in touch, and I will speak to you again next time. Take care. See you soon, guys.
Well, as always, he always
yeah,
leaves you with something to think about, Curtis.
He does. And you got a name check, Phil.
I did, yeah. Well, on the world of that spiritual. So, do you have a spiritual side to you, Curtis? Do you look at your inner self?
Well, I mean, spiritual for me at the moment seems to involve a monthly subscription to new whiskies.
Oh, right, you've gone for that, have you?
I don't know if you ever caught it on Dragon's Den, but you can have a sample whiskey delivered to your postbox every month. So that's kind of my spiritual well-being at the moment, and it seems to be doing the job.
It's doing its job, is it?
It is, yes.
Does it depend on what day it arrives, or
it arrives at the beginning of the month, and I tend to wait until sort of midway through the month. I feel as I've deserved it by the middle of the month, so I'm not ripping it out of the postman's hand.
You do hold back.
If that's what you're inferring.
I've seen the adverts for take it on and shut the door in the face, and you've got But I might have to, as a whiskey connoisseur and lover myself, I might have to have a look at that one. I'm not sure my Sarah would be pleased, but I might have to take you up on that one. Anyway, we better get on with some financial news before people start to get too spiritual on things. But I'm thinking of what spirits they're having by the time they've listened to the podcast this morning. But we're heading over to Motor Trader, and this really did catch the headlines this week, that Cazoo Q1 turnover up 159% to 295 million. Yes, 159%. And that's given a gross profit of minus 50% to 2 million. So obviously they're citing their first quarter trading performance and saying that sales rose 102% to 19,713, and that gave the UK retail gross profit per unit that fell by 13.3% to £124. So what did you make of this story, Curtis?
I thought it was fascinating, and I recalled the story that we ran only last week, which was Pendragon's Q1, so exactly the same period to the end of March, and their profit per used unit was tracking at £1,767 compared with, as you say, Cazoo's £124. But there are some sort of mitigating circumstances here for Cazoo, and they did get a fair bit of flack, I noticed, on social media about their profit per unit. But within the story from Motor Trader, Stephen Marana, who's Chief Financial Officer at Cazoo, said, I am encouraged by the progress we have made in Q1, significantly increasing our revenue by 159%, which is fair enough. But, as he goes on to say, as previously detailed, our Q1 UK retail GPU was impacted in the short term from investments made in the second half of last year. And he cites the launch of its car buying channel and bringing its UK reconditioning in-house. So there are mitigating circumstances there, and he goes on to say, we expect a significant improvement in our UK retail GPU in Q2 and throughout the rest of the year as we start to see the benefits of these investments. Now, we do know that Cazoo has made some massive investments over recent months, so it will be fascinating to see how these actually play out in its Q2 and Q3 figures.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed this numerous times. This is a long game into it. They have been, like you say, the growth and the speed of growth, and that investment growth has been huge over the recent years. And they're just adding a little bit to this. There was a story in the Times of this week on the 4th of May that were basically on the back of their share values, which would have been probably a similar time to the Q1 performance, but that Cazoo's founder has blamed irrational fear in the stock market for the dramatic fall in value on the US listed shares in the British online used car retailer, and that Alex Chesterman insisted that nothing Cazoo Pacific had knocked shares in the company by 83% since its listing last summer, and that was citing the 13% drop in shares or 21 cents at $1.40, and that was on the 4th of May there. So he's obviously saying that it's a irrational fear against what's happening in the market and what they're doing. But again, the turnover's growing, the volume's growing, and I think we covered that story previously with their forecast of margin in the future and what they're looking at doing. And I think, if in defence to Cazoo, I think one thing is clear: everything Alex has said he's going to do is kind of done, Auntie. I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, he has, and as you've intimated, for Cazoo, it is all about the long game, and there are some easy headlines to get out of Cazoo at the moment because of their performance. But Alex Chesterman, as we know from his previous successes, he is looking at the long game. So let's just see how these results pan out this year.
Yeah, definitely. And heading over to AM Online, and more results here from Group 1 Automotive reveals a record profit from outstanding Q1 2022. So again, citing that the performance that they had in the first quarter of this year that rose 30.1% to the end of March, an all-time high of 3.8 billion. or 3.03 billion, as a net income from continuing operations hit a record of 20.1 million. 201 million. A 99.3% increase year on year. So those are some numbers to get your head around there, Curtis.
Yeah, 3.30.
You've got to get the decimal point in the right place, haven't you?
Billion, yeah, 3.03 billion pounds. I mean, that's extraordinary. Extraordinary figures here. And commenting on the results, Group 1 President and Chief Exec Earl J. Hesterberg, who probably has one of my favourite names in the car retailing sector, great name. So he says, our record profit performance this quarter was the result of continued strong consumer demand and outstanding operational performance across all our business sectors in the US and UK. So it's great to see the UK getting a name check there. It is an important and growing part of the Group 1 US business.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we've obviously been citing a lot of the UK performance figures, but I mean, some of the figures that have been coming out of the US and on the back of strength of margin and demand over there have been huge. Big operators with some big money, big turnovers, and big net incomes as well. So although the US is starting to ease now, the forecasts for new vehicles have been downgraded. Used vehicle supply over there is not dissimilar to what it is over here. So they have got some challenges and headwinds over there. But again, really been riding the crest of the wave there around demand and shortage of supply, which is in turn give them fantastic profit per unit, haven't they? It's been a huge performance over there.
Yeah, and finishing off this week with another success story. So we've got the full year financials from Weyland's Automotive, and the headline at Motor Trader is Weyland's Automotive sees profits rise 115% to £2.7 million. So this is strong performance for 2021 full year to December, with pre-tax profits up 115% to 2.7 million, on turnover ahead 40% to £124.6 million, and on a like-for-like basis, profits rose 78% to £2.2 million. So, a really good result there for Chief Exec John O'Hanlon and his team there. And just to summarise, the group now represents Volvo, Kia, and MG from dealerships in Reading, Newbury, Swindon, Oxford and Bristol, and has really been such a success story over recent years, because we've tracked Weyland since the time it launched as a solus Volvo group, but as I say, has expanded into those other brands and rather successfully.
Yeah, no, and I know John is a good friend of the show there, so congratulations, John, on the result there and your continued growth, and you and your leadership team. And we must catch up soon. You must come on the podcast again soon. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So please just give us a shout, come on, and give us an update of what you're up to. What's next for Mr. O'Hanlon and the Weyland Group as well. So that's it for this week, isn't it? I mean, a little bit of food for thought there from our friend Steve Whitten on the Menable. Find your inner spirit. Do what you feel in your gut feeling. Lots of financial headlines there again, and a little bit of context around what's happening in the new vehicle market. Do check out the SMMT, because the van results will be on there as well. We mustn't forget the van results, the LCV sector. But and again, as Curtis said right at the start there, don't forget you can still download many of the interviews that we've had over recent months, and you might still get some tickets for the Driving Digital if you're quick. They are free, but there may be some available for you to get, and that's if you can get to the AM Awards, which I think you said, Curtis, you'd have to beg, borrow or steal now to get those tickets for the AM Awards down at the Westminster there. But yeah, that's it for this week, isn't it, Curtis?
It is, yeah. Unfortunately, that's all for now. You've been listening to the weekly Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for joining us for all the chatter that matters. We're back again next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.